What is going on, guys? My name is Aaron, and thank you all so much for tuning into the video. Today, I'm going to be going over my 2 favorite lures to catch your personal best bass this spring. Not only am I going to tell you guys the lures, I'm also going to be giving you guys the location, the equipment, and the technique in order to get the job done. So stick with me till the end of the video. Keep these 2 lures tied on all spring long, and I guarantee you your personal best bass, or at the very least, one of the biggest bass in your lake. So lure number 1 is not going to be a surprise to many people. That is going to be a Wacky Rig Senko. And I want you to pay attention to 2 things on the Senko. So number 1 is going to be the O-ring, and number 2 is going to be that smaller hook. The O-ring is important mainly to prevent us from losing baits. So all of us know the Senkos are very expensive. The worst thing in the world is when you wacky rig hook one, you toss it out there and you lose it very first cast. So the O-ring tool is 10 or 15 bucks. I highly recommend getting one of those. They're very easy to use and they're going to save you a lot of money in the long run. The next thing was that smaller hook. So I prefer a size 2 Gamakatsu drop shot hook. The reason why I prefer a smaller hook is twofold. So number 1, it's a smaller presence in the water. When we're trying to trick these bigger fish, a lot of times these bigger fish are very smart and they've been caught before. So anything that gives us an advantage, whether it's a smaller hook or whether it's lighter line, is really, really important when targeting these giant bass. The next thing that's going to be helpful with the smaller hook is this slower sink rate. So with a bigger hook, it's going to fall a little bit faster. I want that bait to fall slower and I want it to stay in their face for a little bit longer. Now there's only 2 colors that I personally use when it comes to the Senko, and that is a black and blue in dingy water, and that is a green pumpkin in clear water. You can experiment around with different colors if you want. Those are my 2 confidence colors, and I don't feel like I need any other color Senkos ever in the rest of my life. So every lake is different, experiment around, but if you're only gonna buy 2, those are the 2 that I recommend. The equipment that I'm fishing this on is a 610 medium spinning rod. You want something with a little bit lighter tip because obviously we're fishing this very small hook and it's really important to have a really parabolic bend in the rod. I'm using 10-pound braid to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. The braid is high fluorescent because I want to be able to see that bite, see that jump in the line if a fish bites. I also want to be able to see it if it's swimming left or right. That's really important to get that high vis braid to the leader. The next lure I want to tell you guys is my secret weapon, and I've kind of been keeping it close to the vest, but I want to tell it to you guys because I really want you guys to be able to go out and catch your personal best this year. And that is going to be a Zoom Horny Toad. So the Zoom Horny Toad is a really, really good bait. I call it the heartbreaker because you're either going to catch your personal best bass on it or you're going to lose your personal best bass on it. So I really, really like it, but it also sometimes will break your heart for sure. Now, what I have this on here is I have it on a 4/0 Gamakatsu Superline hook. I do recommend the 5/0 instead of the 4/0, and obviously it has a spring at the top. These are made basically for swim baits or specifically for horny toads. The reason why you want a little bit bigger hook than a 4/0 is because the horny toad has a lot of plastic on it. So you guys can see there's a lot of meat for that hook to get through. When you do set the hook, it needs to penetrate fully. And if you have a 4/0, there's a little bit less of a gap here at the bottom than there is a 5/0. So I do recommend the 5/0 Gamakatsu Superline hook. In terms of color, I always just stick with the black. If you do have a shad spawn on your lake, you can go with the white as well. But for me, it's just stick with the black and keep it simple, basically. Something I want to show you guys that's really important is keeping these tail legs straight. So a lot of times you'll get them in the package and these tail legs are all crinkled up. You want to make sure they're straight so it runs good. What I like to do is as soon as I get the package in, I will take them out and gently place them in the package to make sure they are straight. Or if you get a couple on your boat and you're fishing one day and they're all crooked, I'll lay them out on the boat as I'm using them and have the sun kind of straighten them out as I go. The equipment I'm fishing the horny toad on is a 7/6 heavy rod. You can also get away with a medium heavy rod if you want to, but it has to have a pretty meaty tip. The reason you want that beefy rod is because you have to be able to penetrate that gill plate of a big fish. So you want a bigger rod. I'm throwing that on 30-pound braid. I need to be able to get that fish out of these nasty backwater areas that I'm catching them in. So 7/6 heavy rod, 30-pound braid is my preference. Now, we know both the lures now, so let me tell you guys the location that I'm fishing these in. So we're targeting pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn fish. So I'm fishing this in spawning pockets. A lot of the time that your spawning pockets on your lake are going to be somewhere where it's protected from the north wind. That's typically what I found. That north wind comes in and it's usually a colder wind, so those spawning bass don't like to, they like to be out of the way of that wind basically. The real key, though, when you're looking for these areas is you want to find the places close to deep water. The thing that I found with these giant bass is they all like to have deep water access. They're okay pulling up and spawning, but if they feel threatened or anything like that, they want to be able to go into the deep water for safety. So keep an eye out for that. Look for those deep water areas near the spawning flats, and those are really the banks that I prefer to target. So we know the lures, we know the location. Let's talk about the technique. I'm fishing these two baits the exact same way for the most part. So I'm skipping them back as far as I can get it. Anyone who's been out there and fished for spawning fish knows they like to spawn kind of in the bushes in the water or where there's brush overhanging. So with these baits, you're going to have to skip it back as far as you can possibly get it. So both of them, I'm throwing it back there. On the horny toad, I have a straight retrieve. And then on the wacky rig, I'm bringing it back like a jig. So I'll let it fall for about 5 seconds and I'll give it a couple hops, let it fall for another 5 seconds. I'll usually do that about 3 to 5 times and then reel it back in. So we know the baits, we know the location, we know the techniques. I'm going to give you guys another secret. So the secret to these baits is fishing them earlier than everyone else. Here in Virginia, our fish spawn at about mid-April to mid-May is usually when most of the fish are spawning. You want to fish that bait a half a month to a month before everyone else is fishing it. So a lot of times with that horny toad, that is the first top water that is going to get bit. I will fish that bait when the water is 55 or 60 degrees, way before anyone else is throwing top water. That's the secret with those guys. Those big pre-spawn females typically will pull up pretty early compared to the other fish. So I really like to target those earlier in the year than everyone else is targeting them. But with that being said, those are my two favorite baits. Keep them tied on all spring long. Go fish them before other people fish them, and you will be amazed at the quality fish you can catch. My last 3 years in a row, I've broken my PB each year, and it has been on one of these lures. So crazy experience. I know you guys can go out and do the same. If you all found this content helpful, please like, please subscribe, and please drop a comment. The commenting really helps the algorithm, so I really appreciate that. It also pushes me to want to make more content and teach you guys even more. So I really appreciate all the support. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see you guys on the next one.